Welcome to another broadcast of the Deborah Ruffini Show on the Artist First Radio Network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. Find them at artistfirst.com. And now, your host, live from England, here she is. It's Deborah Ruffini.
Greetings from England. This is Deborah Ruffini with another broadcast of the Deborah Ruffini Show. Today, I want to explore something that has recently been drawn to my attention under the term of God winks. God winks apparently are those little coincidences that in actual fact weren't coincidence, but instead the doings of a divine creator. It's crossed my mind before when certain things in life happen and you think, oh, that could have just been by chance, or it kind of gives the impression that there may have been something else at work here. Is there sort of a mind behind what happened? Because the chances of this thing happening on its own accord would seem to be quite slim. So from what I understand, there may have been more than one book written on the subject, but there has been a book, I believe, written by the name of God Winks. And it would be great if I could have this author on as a guest in a future broadcast. That would be fab to share far more about the subject and experiences. Quite fascinating stuff, really. When I was in the church, it was very much the line of thinking was very much there's no such thing as coincidences, only God incidences. And I never really knew what to make of that, because what do we say when, for instance, I remember as a child sort of praying for a nice sunny day for the Sunday school outing, for example, and always seemed a little bit selfish when the farmer would have been praying for rain. So I never really knew what to think about this sort of thing, or if there'd been a catastrophe and it was answered a prayer that these people were spared when the others weren't. Was he winking upon those that were spared because they were in his favour, while the others he couldn't care less about? Or things like one of the things that I would often hear, for example, would be more minor things like God undertaking on the journey because all the traffic lights seemed to be on green when we were supposed to be going through, and then everyone else behind us had the ones on red, and again that seemed quite unfair. Well, where was God in favour of the ones who were behind? So I never really knew, I still don't really know what to make of that. But something happened a little while ago. It was actually, I think it was Good Friday. And it left me thinking there must have been something else at work with this. This could have happened on its own accord, but is it likely? I still don't really know the answer, because at the end of the day, none of us are God. We don't know the workings of the mind of God, otherwise we would be God. So it will always remain a bit of a mystery, but it did leave me thinking, and what I'm about to share with you is probably the strongest God wink I've ever had, if indeed they do exist. And this has kind of left me thinking, yeah, I'm sort of erring on the side of they quite possibly do, you know. So, oh, crumbs. Probably, I don't know, last 5 or so years, I guess. There was a little old lady who was quite frail and she must have had a physical condition, because she was quite severely bent over, and she'd be shuffling along to the local shop, the shop that I tend to shop in up the road from me, and I would often pass her with her little trolley, and because I'm heading that way in years, you get to a certain point where it's okay for you to have a trolley. And so I would quite often pass this dear little lady with my trolley on the way to the same shop, and I would kind of smile to myself, thinking, "Oh, that's a glimpse of, you know," looking at her and thinking that's a glimpse of me in sort of 30 odd years' time. And so, yeah, like I say, it's not, at a guess, it's probably about, I don't know, 5 or so years I've been seeing her. And I always wanted that. And by the way, she always had she was very attractive. She had a face, but, you know, she had mascara on and lipstick, and it was just very sweet, the fact that she, you know, she was of mature years, but it didn't stop her smiling, being well presented, dressing well, wearing her makeup. All very sweet. And she, so because she seemed approachable, I always wanted that opportunity to, when I would pass her, kind of, I don't know, just make a joke even about us out in our trolleys and let's have a race, or, you know, some sort of witty banter. It would have been nice to have had some kind of witty banter going on to to kind of, you know, familiarise ourselves with each other, I guess. And it was Good Friday, and I was in a bit of a rush, because I was hoping to catch a friend of mine who works in a charity shop that's about a 20-minute walk from where I am, and I thought, oh, shops in general are bound to shut early on Good Friday, especially charity shops. So I timed it quite well that I would do a little bit of shopping. I needed to get something for my friend, so I made a point of leaving in good time so that I could get my shopping, get the gift for my friend, and then drop it in there in the charity shop. So that was all planned out. And incidentally, sometimes when you plan things, a lot of the time when you plan things, it doesn't pan out to how, you know, you intended. And there again, could that be a gold wink? We'll never know when you look at the broader picture of things, you know. So I'd set out with my trolley, and I was heading towards this shop that this old lady tends to shop, and she was leaning on a wall of someone's house, outside the forecourt of someone's house. And so this was my opportunity to speak to her, to ask if she was okay. And she looked a bit breathless, and so I just said, "Are you all right?" She said, "No. Could you help me across the road?" And she wasn't looking too good, and so I said, "Sure, that's fine." And so she told me that she felt a bit weak and a bit dizzy, and could I, you know, help steady her going across the road. So she took my arm, and we were both walking at a very, very slow pace. She clearly wasn't feeling very good. So the shop actually wasn't that far away. But by the time it took for her to walk, it took a lot longer than what it normally would. So we go into the shop, and she's got a little list of things to get, which of course, someone able-bodied is able to rush around and put the things in the basket. But it was taking quite a while, and that was okay because, the rest didn't matter really. It didn't matter at this point if I was too late to do what I needed to do, because this person was clearly not in the best place. So we went round the shop and got the bits in the basket that she needed. And then I paid for those. And again, she wasn't really, she had so much to deal with, sort of how she was feeling. So I paid for her shopping, which was no problem. And then I had to work out how to drag 2 trolleys back. So I sort of worked out a system with this. We came out of the shop, and I walked her back to hers, sat her down, asked her if she'd like a nice cup of tea, and she said, no, I'm okay. I just want to sit down and relax and take it easy. And she said that she'd been, she was 75 years of age, and she said that she had never been in hospital, didn't like hospitals. But the first time she'd been in hospital, it was about 3 weeks ago. I think she said it was 3 weeks ago. She'd had I don't know if it was a kidney transplant, but it was something to do with the kidneys that she'd been in hospital for. The first time in 75 years of her life, which is pretty amazing. But I think it had left her quite frail and quite weak. So she had a bit of a chat about that. She was sitting down. I unpacked her shopping, and she asked if I would phone 111, which over here is it's kind of it's like an emergency. It's an emergency phone line, if you like. So it's NHS based, and if there's a problem that you need to speak to someone, but you don't actually need to go to a walk-in. It's like a phone equivalent, really. So she asked me to phone 111. I was on the phone for, I don't know, 3/4 of an hour, something like that. And the lady on the other end of the phone was asking all sorts of questions to sort of determine what was going on, really. Now, I think from then it's taken, depending on the outcome, if an ambulance needs to be called out or a doctor needs to be called out. I think it's that sort of principle. So by the questions this lady was asking, and I was holding the phone to this elderly lady's ear, I think it was to rule out a possibility of stroke. So we had the phone call, and then this lady asked if I would phone her son, who was at work, to put him in the picture and to ask if he could come down and see her. So I did that. I phoned the son, mentioning that his mum wasn't feeling too good, that she was just sat down and I was with her at the moment. And so he said, I will leave work early and come and see to mum as soon as possible. So I was then able to, for the first time, have a chat with this lady, and we had a little bit of a giggle about the trolleys, and I said I'd often seen her, and she seemed to perk up just I think just because we were talking, and she was still feeling rough, but her mind was sort of somewhere else because we were talking, and so I said, your son should be here soon. I think he sort of said he'd be within 20 minutes or whatever it was. Do you feel okay for me to leave you now? Because I need to do a few bits up the road. and I was still in fair time to do what I intended setting out to do anyway. So she said, that's okay. And she thanked me. And I said, can I give you a hug? So I gave her a hug. And then she started to cry. And I said, you'll be okay. You just, maybe after surgery, you're not feeling quite weak and just need to take it easy. And you'll soon be on the mend, I'm sure. And I'll see you in a little while where we'll be racing our trolleys. So she gave me a smile, and then, she started to cry. And I said that. So it was so Good Friday. Then it was a bank holiday. So I said maybe after the bank holiday. That would have been the Sunday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So maybe sort of on the Tuesday or the following week. Then I would, if it's okay with you, I'll call in and see how you're getting on. And she beamed again at me, and she said, oh, it'd be nice to have a friend. And I came away thinking, oh, it's really nice that I'll get that opportunity to know this lady after all. And, sometimes have a cup of tea with her and call in when I'm passing, which is quite often anyway. So I felt sad for her, but I thought it's quite nice that we can sort of be friends now. So I headed off to do what I'd intended to do, and saw my friend. I got the bits I meant to get, hopped into the charity shop, saw my friend, came back. And then it was, I think it was just under a week later. I thought I'd give her time to, get a little bit stronger and maybe give her a ring and see how she is, and if she wouldn't mind me popping in just to see how she's doing. So that was my intention. And then I went round to see my now sort of quite frail elderly parents, and I was in the kitchen making a cup of tea for us, and a text came through on my phone, and it was from the son, and he said, hi Deborah, it's I hope you don't mind me getting in contact, but it's just to let you know that Mum passed away peacefully, unexpectedly. And she just wanted to we just want, as a family, we just wanted to let you know that we're grateful for you showing kindness and looking after Mum when she wasn't feeling very well. And that really sunk my heart. I felt very sad. And so, bless her, I thought I would never be able to be friends with her, but I was glad that I was there for her when she wasn't feeling good. And I was glad that I was able to meet her and be introduced to her. So I came away with this thinking, this is quite an interesting thing to happen. Bearing in mind all that time and all those times I passed her and only just seen her, and shall I speak? Shall I say something? No, I won't. And the very time that I do is when it would be the first and final time. And so part of me thought, well, that is something that could just happen. But then the more I stopped to think about it, I thought it didn't. Could it? I mean, it's a slim chance, isn't it, that it would happen like that. And I still keep thinking about that and thinking, was there something else involved? Was there? Because it makes sense that this was for a reason. I don't mean to sort of be this old lady's hero. I'm talking about, maybe it sounds like a selfish perspective, but the fact that I was able to meet her It just seems that this was more than just chance. It just seems too involved almost. But then you've got the flip side of that. In what would be the purpose of that then? Apart from for the purpose of helping her, we get that. I could have been anyone to have helped that lady. It didn't have to be me. But the fact that it was, to me, says, again, like I say, because I've seen her all those times and, wanted to be acquainted and all this sort of thing, that's the bit where I think there could have been something bigger involved, that it was me that was the person that helped her for that very reason. But then you've got the flip side of what will all that be about then? Because that wouldn't have developed into a friendship. Because I'd said hello and unknowingly also said goodbye. So when you think about it like that, you then think, well, you're back to square one with, I don't know. But it's interesting, isn't it? And I think there's lots of things that do happen in life where we think, oh, that was a strange thing to happen just on, on its own accord. That must have happened for a reason. And quite often with the same situation, there is that flip side. You think, well, okay, if that happened for a reason, what about that then that looks like it didn't happen for a reason? So I just wanted to share that with you because I don't remember this area being covered before in any of the previous broadcasts. I may have touched on it with a guest, but I just thought I would, maybe think about this a little bit more in today's show. But as I was contemplating this and making a few notes for what I would be, talking about today, it was quite late at night, and I take a pint glass of water up to bed with me, and I'd written some things down, made some notes, went to reach for my glass of water, and I knocked it, and it poured all over my bedding. And, a whole pint of water is a heck of a lot to dry out. It gets through the mattress, it gets through the duvet, it gets through the pillow. So I had to sleep the next, few nights on my settee downstairs. And so that got me thinking again, well, if everything is organised, if everything is of God, there's no such thing as coincidences, but God, if God is in everything, what was the purpose of that then? Because they didn't look like there was any reason for that to happen. But having said that, we could get silly here and go to the extreme. Was there a reason that I had to sleep downstairs those few nights? Was there a reason in the broader scheme of things that I had to spill all that water on my bedding? That may be something that may come out, I don't know, in a month's time. But I do think, this is a silly example, but I think it's quite poignant, really. I do think that sometimes we think, oh, for goodness sake, what was that about? Why did that have to happen? A negative thing. Why did that have to happen? And then with sort of experiences that are to follow, sometimes a long time after that, sometimes a short time after that, we think, if that thing didn't happen, then this thing wouldn't have happened. This positive thing wouldn't have happened. So I do think there are some things that we may not make sense of in life that do happen, but sort of happen in order to take you somewhere else, to be part of the future's broader picture, if that makes any sense. Could even be things like, possibly being in the right place at the right time. in the wrong place at the right time or the wrong time. There's just too much out there that I think it's quite fascinating as to what could be involved in things that we just think are ordinary happenings, or are things just left to chance. And if there is bigger involvement, divine involvement, it seems quite likely that the divine involvement would sort of be in everything, what we would call God, I suppose, rather than in some things, I think, because then we're dealing with a God who would just sometimes, turn a blind eye or blink, turn away momentarily. It's an interesting one. It's very, very baffling, very fascinating, and in a sense, thank God we don't know the full picture of that or what it's all about, because we're then dealing with the future, and I don't think we'd be able to cope with what the future would hold at the time when we're in our present. Thank God that we can only deal with the present and the past, because I think if we just wouldn't live. If we could see what the future held, I think we just wouldn't live, or we'd be jumping one step ahead all the time. So yeah, it is an interesting one, and again, it sort of led me into thinking. I have done a broadcast before about the situation with the police, where I was falsely accused of something that there was no evidence for, and at the time it was like, God, where are you in this? Why does this need to happen? That it just seems senseless. It's pointless. It didn't feel like the love of God. It got me wondering if, do things just happen on their own accord? And I think that's how, so I don't want to divert, but I think sometimes that is how people can lose their faith in God. Sometimes people who have had a strong faith in God can sometimes lose their faith in God, not necessarily due to rebellion, but they can come to a point in their lives or conclusion where they think, well, I thought God was looking out for me. Where is he? If God is loving and God is all present, why did he allow this to happen? Where was he in that? And I think that I think I have touched on this before, and maybe we'll do in future broadcasts, that I think that makes me quite sad with a lot of faith-based people, where people who perhaps have never had faith, or have once had faith, but they've come to a point where they've let that faith, let that faith go, or that faith has gone, rather. It's not necessarily due to rebellion against God. It's due to the disappointment and the grief of once having a God in your life and then it's gone. And I think sadly many people of faith don't seem to be able to distinguish between the two. There's a big difference between disbelief, sincere disbelief, sincere disbelief, deliberate rebellion, believing in God but choosing to turn your back on God, which I don't think I've ever come across a case like that. The people that I've known or known of who have once believed and then disbelieved or have become skeptical, it is simply what it is. It's been due to something that has happened. It's not been because they still hold on to their belief, but they say, I don't want to know. I don't think that often happens, and it's a shame that many faith-based Christians don't see that difference. And I think, that can take one to go through a grieving period of once having this huge belief, this huge faith, trauma happens, catastrophe happens, and then sorry, this isn't where I'm at, by the way, but I have seen it happen, and I do, I'm very much aware that it does happen, that it's a loss, that you've lost your saviour, you've lost this ultimate rock, the rock that will never let us down, and then suddenly something happens, and not so much that God has let you down. Where is God? Does God really exist now? And that's a big thing to happen. That's a big trauma to take place in once having your everything, and now you've got your nothing, and it's something, and on top of that, it's the initial trauma that you have to deal with that has made you come to that conclusion anyway. So anyway, I'm diverting there. It's just another, thought about that really. But yeah, the whole thing with the police back last year, and thank God that the IOPC who police the police as such have recognised this was a case of police misconduct. So, my point being is, at that time, at that, horrible time back last year, I was thinking, what is this all about? Why does this have to happen? Where are you, God, in this? And then chance, or God suddenly appears in saying, yeah, here I am. I've recognised that they weren't fair. You were, unfairly treated, and there is going to be some action taken. But then you can also think, well, okay, why did that happen in the first place? In order to bring it, none of it had to happen. It's a bit like there's a it's quite old now, maybe about 30 years old. It was a 3-part drama called Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit. I don't know whether it made it on an international scale, but it was a British drama, and it was the story of author Jeanette Winterson, who was, this is irrelevant, but in a nutshell, she was raised in a Pentecostal family, and everything was either righteous or evil. There was no middle ground. Everything was either of God or of Satan. And so the storyline is basically she's same-sex attracted. She grows up, and this is her same-sex attraction is the ultimate sin, but there's all these other sins going on surrounding her, like gossip and general unkindness really going on in the church. But anyway, I digress. My point is, there's an interesting part in that where the minister's preaching one Sunday, and there's an elderly lady in the congregation. Her name's Elsie. And the minister says, does anyone want to give testament to God? Does anyone have they got anything to say? And Elsie gets up and she says, I'd just like to share with everyone here, Pastor, that this morning I woke up with dreadful wind, but by the grace of God, it's gone. And the pastor says, God bless you, Elsie. God gave you that wind so that he could take it away. That doesn't even make any sense. So why did it happen in the first place? So it's bordering on that really. Why do some things have to actually happen in the first place in order for God to then put it right? But then it could just, we don't know. We're not the mind of God. It could be just so that we get to witness His gracious and good doing and justice after we've questioned him. So it could be for that to strengthen our faith, if you like. But But yeah, I mean, I certainly felt it with the situation with the police, because so much has happened just within a year. Well, just under the year. It was May the 20th that I received that phone call back last year. That, within a year, I've been able to I've become a lot stronger, as in not tolerating things that people shouldn't have to tolerate. It was the last straw when I had that phone call, because that was the ultimate bullying, defending the abuser in the name of policing. No, this was like, enough is enough. So I think that for that reason, that had to happen, where I've now come to a point where I probably wouldn't take any more. No, not probably. Wouldn't take any more rubbish from anyone, or certainly become quicker to recognise rubbish that we shouldn't have to take on, or nip it in the bud as soon as it looks like it's brewing, So I think that happened. It happened for that reason, to get the outcome, the successful outcome of admitting to the corruption within the police force of my county. And also to, start a support group and a petition and everything to help other people. And I think that's another thing. I think sometimes, many times, God does allow bad things, negative things, awful things to happen to people, so that my last guest was the lovely Nancy Little. I mean, she's living testament to that anyway, that, dreadful things unfortunately happened to her in order for her to help others and bring about awareness. And I think sometimes that happens. They say behind every counsellor, every therapist, there is someone who has been through trauma themselves in order for them to want to help others. It takes you to that place, because I suppose in being in that line of work, you've got to have that passion to help get others through something that they've already been through and seen light at the end of the tunnel. And if you think about it, if you haven't had certain things happen to you, you're not going to be anywhere near as passionate about it as simply sort of, I don't know, learning about it just as subject matter, or to gain a qualification, or to have it on paper. You think of the books that have been written about abuse, or autobiographies written by survivors. The content is going to be far more passionate than if it was just someone that had just done a bit of studying about it, spoken to a few survivors, and then written a book. It's not going to be, it's not going to be coming from the same place. So yeah, I think things do have to happen. Bad things have to happen in order to bring about the good that we may not see until, much further down the line. And the waiting periods can sometimes be quite hard. Where is God in this all? But yeah. So going back to the original point, I was just thinking the whole thing is really interesting on God winks. I like that term, God winks. That he sort of sometimes seems very much in the background with it all, but it's all in his hands. And it's just kind of holding on to that, really, that, where he may seem quite far away and quite distant, maybe he's actually further than we think. And sometimes, many times when we're in something, we can't see the wood for the trees, because we're actually in that position. It's only when we come out of something, whether it's a situation, a relationship, a friendship, or whatever it is, it's only sometimes from the outside looking in that we can then, that's what it's all about, So at the end, it's all a big mystery. We'll never know this side of life. in a sense, it makes it quite exciting that there's certain things we won't know until we reach the end and we get to see the broader picture and, have light shed on it all. But, it's just an interesting thought. God winks. Does it exist? Or are things just by chance? Some things exist, does it exist some of the time? And, other times, nope, it's just by chance. But no, I think possibly it's, we're surrounded by miracles and goings on that's carried out by God behind the scenes, as it were. But, we're not to see the full picture for our protection, possibly. Can only really take in so much at a time, can't we? So it's just an interesting one. It's just an interesting thought. But yeah, I'm hoping for a near future broadcast to speak to the author of this book and, learn a little bit more about this and hear of more breathtaking scenarios where, wow, there has to be been a divine hand in that. That couldn't have just happened. Because I actually haven't come across too many. So it's a very interesting subject and, looking forward to learning more about this. And anyway, it's been a pleasure to chat with you, and I hope you're all doing well. And until next time, lots of love and God bless.